Excellent. So take a seat, everybody. Our next panel will unpack the evolving job landscape, spotlight essential future skills, and discuss how to prep the leaders of tomorrow. It is entitled, The Future of Work, Predicting the Shift in Skill Requirements and Implications for the Next Generation. So I'd like to welcome up to the stage our moderator, Manisha Sangyakar, General Manager for the Khan Miller Institute. Welcome, Manisha, come on up. So she'll be moderating this next session. And then I'd also like to welcome up Mary Saliba, President, NGO, World Lebanese Cultural Union, Denmark. Diana Robertson, Founder and CEO, Skills Me Academy. Dr. Stephen Harris, Co-Founder and Chief Learning Officer, Learn Life. And Ramisan Durasamy, Founder, Entrepreneur Success Foundry. Oh, and one more panelist. Melkart Rohana, Chief Engagement Officer and best-selling author, MRT Consultants. Let's give them all a round of applause. Okay, does everybody there have a microphone? We'll bring out another one. Everybody has one? Yeah. Okay, we need just one more microphone. Okay, so over to you, Manisha. No need to switch it. If you start talking, it should go on. Just start speaking.
Can everyone hear me?
Right.
Well, we had to be a little bit adaptive and agile today as we talk about it today because one of our teammates, our panelists, couldn't be here. He had to leave. He's got other commitments. So apologies, Malkat's no longer with us, but we'll get started. So we'll start with setting up and introducing our panel, and I might throw it to you, Ramisan.
I'm the founder of Entrepreneur Success Foundry, which is a training firm. We train entrepreneurs to succeed in a way they haven't imagined yet. I've been in business for 30 years. Over that time, I founded about 16 different businesses, and I was able to do that because I start a business, build value, and then sell it on and move on to do something else. In that time, I've also gone through an earthquake and survived that. Today I run a training program about unexpected crisis management. I'm a speaker on international stages. We do training in different parts of the world as well. And that's a little bit about me.
And again, microphone's on. It's great to be here. I should mention first of all, I was born in a country that wasn't mentioned in any of those things that happened this morning. For some reason, New Zealand got left off again, and quite often from our maps of the world, New Zealand left off. But I was born in New Zealand. I've been educated myself in 3 countries, New Zealand, England, and Australia. I've been a school principal for 20 years. I've been in a classroom running schools for 46 years, and I now work in Barcelona and Sydney, so I job half the year remotely, half the year in person. Learn Life is an activity that was started as an entrepreneurial activity where we are seeking to create a version of school experience which is unlike anything that's traditional. And it's been a great opportunity. And if you want to talk about Learn Life Bill with me, I'd love to share that with you. We also train people from across 8 to 9 countries at the moment in how do you actually approach the role of teaching differently. If you want to get me really passionate, I'm also a children's book author in Rwanda. I've actually been to Rwanda over 30 times, and one of the things I noticed was that there was a lack of any children's literature that reflected their own culture, so I started writing the Rwanda village tales in English and Kinyarwanda. So if you are interested at all in that, I'd love to talk. That's what get me passionate.
Great, thank you, Dr. Stephen. Over to you, Diana. Thank you very much, Manisha. Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Robertson. I'm the founder and CEO of SkillsMe Academy, which is the official school for developing soft skills. Think of it as a virtual school you would go to in your adult mode and learn some soft skills if you missed out earlier on. I am also a TEDx speaker, communication skills trainer and coach, and we work with various organizations like the UK government, Deliveroo, over 30 universities in the UK and the US, and many more. Originally, I'm half Russian, half Arab, but we are based in the UK. Thank you. And not lucky but not the last, Mary.
Thank you, Manisha. So my name is Mary Saliba. I am born and raised in Denmark, but I have roots in Lebanon. And I identify myself as very curious, and I love to connect with people and also make a change in the world. And therefore, I'm kind of a human octopus. I'm in very different fields. So one of the fields is that I am a teacher in Thai boxing and kickboxing in Copenhagen Youth School. Secondly, I study my master in business administration and corporate law in Copenhagen Business School, where I'm in my last semester right now writing my thesis in competition law and industrial economy in the energy-intensive industry. And number three, is that I am the president of World Lebanese Cultural Union in Denmark, which is an INGO, and it has been established in the late 1950s and has chapters in 17 different countries. We established the NGO again in Denmark last year, where before that I was the president of the youth chapter for 6 years as well. And then, last but not least, I used to be the head of partnerships in a coding academy as well. So, yeah, as I said very shortly, I'm very curious and I love to explore a lot of different areas.
Thank you. And my name is Manisha Sangeetar. I'm the General Manager at the Canberra Institute. We've come all the way from Melbourne, Australia, but I have really enjoyed the day today, full of learnings, experiences, and sharing insights. My background is multidisciplinary. I have worked in HR, in marketing, in IT, risk and governance, and name it. But what everything brings it together is the people. So people is the business that I'm in. I have, in the last few years, really worked on strategic workforce planning, which is all about predicting the future skills, predicting what's coming, what's happening in our environment, and working through that to get to the point B, to get to the point that we can actually close that gap. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. Just before we get started, I want to set the scene a little bit. What is happening in our world today? There are a number of macro trends. There is external labour market. There's labour market shortages. The unemployment rates are low. And what this means, it's actually really hard to hire. There's not enough people that we can find for the skills that we need today. The other things that is happening is the major digital transformation. A lot of the talks today have touched on AI, talked about ChatGPT, talked about major technological advancements. That's not new. It's been happening for the last 10 or 15 years. But the pandemic set us off. The rate of change increased exponentially. In the recent PwC report that got released in only January this year, 60% of CEOs across the 2,000 that was surveyed said their organization, as it stands today, will not be there in the next 10 years. That's 60%. There are major inefficiencies in businesses today. The traditional models, legacy job structures, rigid hierarchies are not going to let us progress. So what do we need to do? My approach is the three-pronged approach: the dynamic organization, dynamic leadership, and the skills of individuals themselves. And I love the approach called the T-shaped skills, which is not just diving deep into your area of expert, but also the breadth, so you actually stay relevant. So today with our panel, we're actually going to deep dive into some of these topics. And our first theme for today is skills. Is it the future currency at work? I might start with you, Diana. The skill gap today. What skills should be taught more to bridge that gap?
Now I can only talk about my sector and what I have experienced so far. And soft skills happen to be some of the biggest, this missing link and the result of that gap. Now, we work with universities in the UK and in the US, and they prepare students to go and find a job, right? And then, but we also have employers looking for people to join them. And what's happening is that recently LinkedIn did the report on learning and development, and they identified that the employers are looking, like the three top skills the employers were looking at when hiring people and hiring graduates were leadership skills, creative problem solving, and communication skills. Guess which are the three skills that the graduates were least good at? Now, my opinion about this is that our traditional systems are just not preparing people for their future lives. And for example, what happens as a result of that is that sometimes you get really smart kids, really talented, but they fail to find the right jobs. And they fail to pass a single job interview or pass the assessment center, which are the places designed by employers to check whether they have those soft skills or not. So as a result, what often happens, as my students tell me, is that very often it's not the smartest that gets the job, it's the loudest. Now, I'm not here talking about the fear, whether that's fear or not, it's just it's an advantage they have. They have good soft skills, some people naturally have them. But what saddens me most is that, what about those other kids? What about them? Are they not suited to be the leaders of tomorrow? No, not at all. There could be some really, really smart people in there. But the problem is they just can't show that, even at the very first stage when they go and find the work. And this issue is really personal to me as well, because when I was younger, I was actually one of such kids. I was the type of student who would never raise her hand in the class, even though I was one of the top 10% in the university in terms of grades. But it didn't matter, because I was afraid that, I was afraid to speak in front of public. I was afraid to speak up. And this introversion and shyness stayed with me throughout my life. I couldn't get good jobs from the start as well. Also, I had terrible leadership skills. Anytime they put me on any type of group project, I would be doing so badly. I would hate those. I would prefer always to work alone. And as a result of that, the image of myself that I got is that, well, this is just not for me. I'm not the leader of tomorrow. I can't speak well. I can't lead. It's just something that's never going to happen. Now, thankfully, in a way that I couldn't get my dream jobs at all. You'll see why thankfully, because I realized that the core thing that I missed was the soft skills. So I dived deep into learning them. So I joined various training courses. I also joined volunteering programs where I took leadership roles so that I can build those skills. And in 6 months, I learned to be a decent public speaker. And in 12 months, I learned how to be a decent leader and manage teams. And but I was very lucky. Like A, I had the means to do that, and B, I joined the right places. But when I speak to students today, and when they come to me, they think that, well, they have no idea what to do. They're in deep pain and frustration. But also what saddens me most is that they don't think they can change. But why would they think that they can change? Throughout the 16 years of Estonian education, typically what you see is that you've got some outgoing people, you've got some shy kids, and one does not become the other. It just stays that way. Because our system does not train those skills. So I would say that, just back to your question, where is the skill gap? And I think soft skills is the number one thing to look at when we're talking about the skills gap. And we need to do something about this as well. But maybe my colleagues have some other thoughts. What other skills are missing?
All comments there. For me, the greatest anomaly at the moment still is that I haven't met any university around the world that is prepared to assess a teacher's capacity before they start teaching as anything other than a solo operator, and yet we want them to become people that teach collaboration. And I would say that in my experience, both within schools and also in business, is that regrettably, teachers are amongst the worst collaborators in the world, and it's not their fault. They've never been trained in how to do that, and yet they're expected to teach it. So I think that the gaps are fundamental, and they're systemic, and we have to put pressure on universities to say, if you want our teachers to be able to collaborate and work together in a community context, well then you have to change the way in which they're trained.
Great, thank you, Dr. Stephen. I might throw this question to you, Dr. Stephen. How might we foster a shift in education systems to align with the skill-based economy?
A really valuable question, because there is this gap. I mean, I'll agree with everything you've just said, and it's getting worse. I mean, I know that. And I can speak from 3 different contexts. I mean, I'll give an Australian answer, then a Spanish, then a Rwandan answer from my 3 different sort of areas of interest. I mean, in Australia, there's an obsession with examinations, unfortunately. And that's driven from the media, and you know that every year they're going to try and get sales for newspapers by highlighting the best schools, the best kids, and everything else. It's so dangerous because it's giving this false perception that you have to pass exams to get to university. Now, about 6 years ago, I heard that Sydney's most sort of historic university, the University of Sydney, only 39% of the entrants were coming in from exam-based contexts. The rest were actually coming in as international students or changing universities or for homeschooling. So it was the minority, and yet you'd actually have the sense that every person needs to get a high exam result to get to university. It wasn't the case, and yet that's fed negatively by media, which gets sort of almost obsessed every year on a cycle of who's got strong results. And the same thing happens in the UK and other countries. I can see it. In Spain, it's the problem there. They do need to shift to a skills-based economy. I know that because that's what the employers want. That's what we've been talking about. In Spain has the worst statistics for all of Europe in terms of kids dropping out of school. 1 in 5 kids do not finish school by the age of 15, and they're not dropping out suddenly at 14 years, 9 months. They're dropping out from 12-year-olds going up through there. And Spain's got 45 million people or more, and in that context, it's a lot of people who are actually dropping out of school. The reason why they're dropping out, the school does not focus on the skills-based learning. It's focusing on a traditional system where kids get disengaged. And I guess that's the passion behind the Learn Life program in Barcelona, is that we've thrown everything out. We're not just working with kids who are disengaged, we've got lots of expat kids and others, but ultimately everything that's been spoken about today in the previous panels, it comes down to relationship. If you haven't got the relationship initially, you're never going to build the skills of communicating, of the skills of articulating, and there are there's a lot of research, Professor John Hackett being one of them, which talks about making learning visible. We don't do that in the schools. The kids don't articulate their learning, and they're not encouraged to speak up. And if I look at the sort of for me, probably the most incongruous system, the Rwandan system, so many African countries were given a colonial education system, and I've seen kids do 8 hours of perfect handwriting every day. It's not only is it not going to get them a job, it's not teaching them the skills that they need to create their job, which is what's going to be critical in their context, because in the regions where I work, it's 85% of people are unemployed after school or after university, and they go back to subsistence farming. And it's not because they're not intelligent, it's because they've never been taught the skills that we're talking about. So how do we shift to that FOSS? That's the biggest one for me, is to say, how on earth do we actually show whole countries which have been given this model of colonial education to say, that was a mistake, an historical mistake. You have to change what you're doing, get rid of the education, get rid of the assessment and examination and frustration going through, so that we don't finish up with absurd situations where I've seen 20-year-olds sitting in a primary classroom because they can't get 50 out of 100 in a test, which is almost irrelevant to them in the first place.
Wonderful. So that just means that we do need to shift. Things are not working. We need to change our education. We need to change the organisation setup, and we need to make way with how the world is evolving. I touched earlier on technology, and leveraging technology is skill for the future. In the labyrinth of the future workplace, technology stands as a touchstone for progress and productivity. The question is, how do we move forward, mastering technological tools, not just as a necessity, but as a fundamental skill for the future? Ravi-san, I might throw this to you. Beyond the technical know-how, what soft skills are crucial for effective technology leverage?
In the outset, let me say that it's time that the so-called soft skills are given its due. For a long time, they played second fiddle to the so-called hard skills. But things like empathy, emotional intelligence, communication capabilities, leadership, and so on should form the fundamental of any leveraging of any technology. But I'd like to talk about two soft skills, which I feel is very crucial to leveraging technology. First, adaptability. If you learn technology, you need to be able to adapt the technology you have learned to suit your organization and its needs. And the other thing is that technology is changing. What I learned about AI, for example, last month, they tell me it's no longer valid. Something else has come along. So we need to be adaptable and be able to absorb new things that's happening out there. That's the first thing. Second, communication. As a team in any organization, if you have learned a technology, not everybody is of the same level in terms of understanding technology. You get somebody like me, I don't know what's the difference between Apple, Mac, and Microsoft. Then you're in trouble. So communication ability is where you have understood technology, you have adapted it to suit your organization, and then you need to be able to simplify and communicate it effectively to the rest of your team. Only then, as a team, your organization will be able to effectively leverage the technology.
It was very insightful. Mary, the next one is for you. How can educational institutions balance the integration of technology with the development of essential human skills such as creativity, collaboration, and emotional intelligence?
mention. So I would just start off with saying that I agree completely with what Ramachan also just mentioned. And to build further on that perception, it is very much worth it to mention the method, ambidexterity, which is a method and terminology that I've learned in university in the course of strategy, innovation, and digital transformation. And it means to exploit and explore simultaneously. And to kind of give you a bit of an easier picture to understand, it is to use sometimes the left hand, sometimes the right hand, and sometimes both hands simultaneously. So I want to ask all of you here in the crowd today, who is right-handed? Okay, amazing. And who is left-handed? Okay, there are a few. I'm happy to see that. Who are both-handed? Great. And also to elaborate further on that methodology, it is very, very crucial in the time and age that we live in right now to perceive things in a more flexible way and to integrate the method of ambidexterity in everything that we do. Because what we do one thing is what we do everything. So, when we speak about the technological advancements and shaping future leaders in the workplaces in the future, it is so important to leverage and to talk about both the technical skills and technical advancement, but also the soft skills and the human touch, which is building collaboration and emotional intelligence, and also, as Ramjan mentioned, empathy, and some of my other panelists and colleagues also mentioned other of the soft skills. Because by balancing those, we also solve one of the big problems that will come in the next 5, 10, 15 years, which is the misunderstanding of the different generations. Because we have the older generation that likes to work with efficiency and structure and in a pattern that they're used to. Where the new generation, they want to build challenges and they want to challenge themselves in different sectors and different things. And they're very ambitious and very curious as well, but they lack a lot of knowledge and experience as well. And that's where the act of ambidexterity can be so beneficial to integrate in this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Mary, you touched on the human touch. Dr. Stephen, can I ask you a question about what does it mean to be human in the world of artificial intelligence and an ever-evolving and transforming workplace world?
As a question that covers so many areas, and it actually touches on to a lot of the soft skills that people have been talking about. I've enjoyed hearing people place the concept of leadership right at the forefront of our conversation today, and the lack of leadership training at every level going through. So that in terms of what does it mean to be human in a world of artificial intelligence and ever evolving, our workplaces that are changing, but we can't possibly keep up with the technological change the way that we used to going through. I can remember back in 2005, I had the privilege of, I had a scholarship to go to 6 countries across the world to look at what they were doing in online learning, and what I found in virtually all countries except for 2 was they had no idea what they were trying to do. This is in 2005. But I went to Iceland, and the Ministry for Education there had a motto in Icelandic, which I could never pronounce, but translated it was do then think. It was the reverse of what virtually every other country was doing, which was think and do. And I looked at that. What what they were doing was placing the reality of being a human in their context, to know that if they wanted to take a small population and actually train them for the world, not just for Iceland, they needed to be thinking differently. Now, if we fast forward to what's been happening in the last 12, 24 months with artificial intelligence, everything I read it's not the list of jobs which are going to disappear. It's what's far more important is who's going to know how to be human in a world of artificial intelligence, because it's the soft skills that will be the jobs. How do you use the AI to advance things? And I think the whole issue of leadership comes into this as well, because we actually need people at every level to be intuitive, to be empathetic, and to be a servant leader. They're all part of the same thing. That again, if we don't focus on those areas, go back to the training issue. I can't know of any teacher training programs that actually focus on empathy or emotional skills for a year, let alone for 3 years. Going through, how do we expect the workforce in schools to be teaching these things, to be human, if they're told your worth is based on examination results? If we're not prepared to throw everything out, I guess again that's where I'm enjoying what I'm doing now at the last few years, because it's having moved out of government, non-government, everything in the system form, to a place where we can say, well, let's throw out all of those questions. What does it mean to be human? Well, for the first week, 2 weeks, month, however long, you've got to be able to relate to the kids. If you actually try and push immediately into you have to learn this, you've disengaged that child. And every child is different going through. I can remember one of my first weeks at Learn from Barcelona when I wasn't very good at Spanish, let alone Catalan. There was this boy who'd been expelled from about 5 schools, was in our program, and he just looked shell-shocked at the end of the week. And I said to him, as we worked out our language, communicate, what was the issue? And he just said, I've never been in a place where teenagers don't fight with adults. And so that he was just, the whole issue of relating was a completely new one for him. So I think for me, when we look at what does it mean to be human, we don't want to have a 10-minute well-being check-in at the start of the day. It has to be every lesson, every day of the year going through. We've heard about the mental health statistics. It's got to be fundamental. The fundamental shift has to be the experience of learning has to be one where every child is not only at the centre, but learning is deeply personal to that child. We've got the ability now with AI to create on-the-shoulder coaches and whatever else 24/7. I can see an amazing opportunity coming ahead if only we can get there.
With the clock ticking, I might have to wrap up here, but we might not even have time for questions. You're more than welcome to find us outside of the session. But I do want to end up by actually saying one thing with all of this is we cannot take away from the ethical bias or ethical considerations of the technology. We do have to remember that these machines, these models are making decisions that are consequential to us. They're making decisions about whether we get the job, whether our mortgage is approved, whether we're going to get the next promotion. So to be aware that they have been designed with biases, and to be aware that how we apply the corrective action, which is very similar to the affirmative action that we apply in today's world to address the issue of equity. I think it's really important to ensure that we actually address that issue as well. And the good news is that they are mathematical models and they're easy to work with, and we can actually do that pretty easily once we are aware of it. So with that, I would like to close the panel, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Now, please have your photo panel. Now, whilst they're having their photo, I would like to ask you all, how many of you remember A teacher who made you feel seen, heard, and valued. Yeah, a few people, fantastic. Can you recall a classroom